nanalo ng Family Feud ng Team Barangay LS 97.1 ng 200,000 pesos.
Family Feud, 5:40 p.m.
Welcome to my episode that is called
Nagmamano pa.
That's okay.
Is footage of an oil tanker on fire off the coast of Iraq. The vessel sending huge fireballs and plumes of black smoke into the air. It's one of two fuel tankers in Iraqi waters which appear to have been attacked by Iranian-controlled boats laden with explosives. Iran is stepping up its attacks on oil and transport facilities across the Middle East and is warning the world should be ready for oil at $200 a barrel.
به دلیل در دست داشتن ابتکار در تنگه هرمز.
Spokesman for the Iranian Armed Forces, Ibrahim Zolkari, says Iran will not allow even a single litre of oil to pass through the Strait of Hormuz if that oil is going to benefit the US or Israel. The US, meanwhile, will release more than 170 million barrels of oil from its strategic reserve in a bid to reduce rocketing oil prices, part of a bigger release of 400 million barrels by nations signed up to the International Energy Agency. And US President Donald Trump has said there's another way the US could help.
When the time comes, the US Navy and its partners will escort tankers through the strait if needed.
But our global shipping reporter, Jonathan Saul, says in reality, the US Navy isn't yet prepared to act.
The industry has essentially been requesting on a daily basis since February 28th support from the US in the form of escorts or some military help. But in actuality, they are being told that the US Navy is not prepared at this stage to commit due to the complexities involved and the risks faced not just by the commercial ships but also by military craft in the strait. We've seen up to 14 vessels being hit either directly or indirectly from everything from projectiles to missiles and of course drones. So the Iranians have got an array of options available to them, and this is why the majority of shipping traffic has come to a halt. By that I mean that they've actually dropped anchor literally, and they're sort of clustered around different parts of the Gulf area. What has moved so far have been a few tankers and a few dry bulk vessels.
For news on the impact of all of this on the markets, tune into our sister podcast, Morning Bid, available wherever you get your podcasts. The strike on an Iranian girls' elementary school, one that could rank among the worst civilian casualty incidents in decades of US conflict, may have been using outdated American targeting data. That's according to two sources Reuters spoke to. Some 175 girls and school staff were killed in the attack on the first day of the war, according to Iran's UN ambassador. Deliberately attacking a school, hospital, or any other civilian structure would likely be a war crime under international law. Here's Reuters foreign policy correspondent Idris Ali.
But it was really one of the most deadly, if not the most deadly strike that the United States has taken. When we reported that military investigators had found that the United States was likely responsible, we have seen social media videos and videos from Iran of what appears to be a Tomahawk missile striking either the school or near the school. And it's important to know that in this conflict, the only side that has Tomahawk missiles is the United States. Iran does not have Tomahawk missiles that can be used.
In the US, Senate Democrats have signed a letter to Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth calling for a swift investigation into the school strike and any other potential US military actions which may have injured or killed civilians. The Pentagon has maintained the position that the US does not intentionally target civilians, and is investigating the school attack. President Trump's response, however, has changed over time.
In the beginning, he said Iran was responsible. When he was pressed on it, he said, well, Iran has tomahawks, which they don't, and he has eventually landed on there's an investigation ongoing.
Idris says, in addition to the two sources who told Reuters that the US may have been using this outdated targeting information in this attack, Reuters journalists have also been looking at location data.
We have, and our colleagues have gone over archived copies of the school's website, and in there you can see that the school is adjacent to a IRGC, which is Iranian or Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps compound. And so you could sort of see that this school was at the very least located close to a potential military target.
In a Reuters exclusive, US intelligence assessments indicate Iran's leadership remains largely intact and in control, nearly 2 weeks into the sustained US and Israeli strikes. One source who Reuters spoke to said a multitude of intelligence reports conclude that there is no immediate risk of the government collapsing, despite the killing of Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and other senior figures. All of the sources Reuters spoke to were granted anonymity to discuss US intelligence findings. The intel underscores how difficult it may be for Washington to find an off-ramp, and comes as the Trump administration gives Congress an initial price tag for the war. A source says officials put the cost of just the first 6 days at over $11 billion. Overnight, explosions rocked Beirut's southern suburbs as Israel continues to target Iranian-backed Hezbollah in Lebanon. That widening of the war has now displaced some 800,000 people, according to Lebanese officials. That's over a tenth of Lebanon's entire population. Those who fled describe grueling journeys. Like Ali, who fled from southern Lebanon to Sidon. He says the journey took him 18 hours on the road, without breaks for food or rest. Families are taking refuge where they can, including in a school in Sidon. Enas Badran says she's grateful for the initiative. It's offered her family a place to cook and to shower. Lebanese authorities say nearly 600 people have been killed in the strike so far, including more than 80 children, according to the World Health Organization. The FBI warned law enforcement agencies last month that Iran could try to retaliate for any US strikes by launching surprise drone attacks on California. That's according to a security bulletin seen by Reuters. The confidential alert, issued before the war began, said Iran allegedly aspired to carry out a drone attack launched from a sea vessel if the US struck Iran, though it stressed there was no information on timing, targets, or perpetrators. President Trump is reopening the tariff playbook again after the Supreme Court knocked out a big part of his earlier tariff program. The administration has launched new trade investigations into 16 major trading partners, including China, the European Union, Japan, India, South Korea, and Mexico. Correspondent David Lauder in Washington, D.C. has more.
What the Trump administration is doing here is it's trying to rebuild the pressure that it had on other countries that the Supreme Court struck down. The Trump administration immediately put in place some temporary tariffs that last for 150 days, 10%. But that's not a lot of lasting leverage. They've negotiated all these trade deals over the last year, so they feel like they have to try to keep them from all falling apart. That's kind of the motivation behind this. I don't think it's an immediate kind of a situation, though. We're talking a few months before you actually get to the point where you're imposing tariffs.
And finally, a 24-hour train ride from Beijing to Pyongyang. It's setting off today, the first passenger train service between China and North Korea after a 6-year pause. It's part of a series of moves by Beijing to rebuild ties between the two countries. Now, before we go, we wanted to make sure you know that the
video version of this podcast is now available on YouTube as well as on Spotify. And we also want to make sure you know that we are listening to you. So we have a question. What do you want to know about the Iran war? Let us know your questions in the comments and we'll answer some of them in tomorrow's episode. For more on any of the stories from today, check out Reuters.com or the Reuters app. Don't forget to follow us on your favorite podcast player. If you're listening on a smart speaker, just ask for the latest news from Reuters 7 days a week. We'll be back tomorrow with our daily headline show.
That's it for your news updates. To see more stories, open Google News.